was even crazier is John Jones came out and was like, I'm in negotiations right now for the White House fight.
I'm in negotiations with the UFC about this White House thing as well.
After I had already sent a text to his lawyer saying, never gonna happen ever.
All right, Sunday morning, leaving Las Vegas. Freedom 250 was announced last night at the White House, going down in June. So we're going to talk about this. I honestly thought we were going to see John Jones versus Alex Pereira, more than likely in the main event. Of course, that's not the main event. That is Justin Gaethje taking on Ilia Topuria for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world, which is a great fight, which is the fight that should happen because obviously meritocracy, and they've got an interim champion. There was people saying that maybe Charles Oliveira or Max Holloway could have gazumped Justin, maybe if they had an insane performance. I'll say this, Charles Oliveira had an insane performance.
So everyone was building up these absolutely massive expectations right. John Jones was supposed to be the headline act, the main attraction for this insane Freedom 250 White House card that's unlike anything we've ever seen before. This is the heavyweight legend, the guy with that almost supernatural reputation around him, expected to be front and center at what might be the most politically significant UFC event in history.
Stopped Max Holloway, didn't put him to sleep per se, but certainly a TKO, so that wouldn't have made sense anyway. Now, I did think John Jones, the greatest of all time, according to a lot of people, and yeah, probably is, obviously, many asterisks to his name. I thought he'd be fighting Alex Pereira, because Alex Pereira vacated the belt. Yuri versus Carlos Ulberg is going down in Miami. That's a great fight. I'm very happy for Yuri Prochazka and for Carlos Ulberg. He's a
But guess what happened instead? He's completely absent from the whole thing. We're getting Ilia Topuria defending against someone for the lightweight title, which is solid, don't get me wrong, but that heavyweight fireworks show everyone was waiting for, nowhere to be found. The interim heavyweight chaos is a whole different conversation, but let's stay focused on what matters most here.
Now, there's an interim title going down in the heavyweight division. Tom Aspinall, obviously. He's been on the sidelines for quite some time now because of Cyril Gane, because of the double eye poke that he enjoyed and suffered at in UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi, right? He's on the sidelines, he's coming back, he just signed with Eddie Hearn. I gave my thoughts on that the other day. Wasn't being critical of Tom in any way. I wish him nothing but the best, and I want to see Tom Aspinall back in the cage doing what he does best. But I can't help but think that Eddie Hearn's kind of playing games here, but we'll see. I talked about that before. The reality of the situation is, though, he's not ready to come back just yet, so they've done an interim title with Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane.
Jones being completely left off such a massive politically charged card that Dana White has been planning down to every last detail tells us everything we need to know about the current situation. Are we looking at strategic exclusion here? Some kind of calculated statement about Jones drawing power, or whether he'll actually step up when the promotion needs him most? The whole meritocracy angle that gets brought up is really interesting because maybe Jones, with all his recent inactivity that's been driving fans crazy, plus his controversial past, just doesn't represent what the UFC wants on display for something this enormous.
Some people might think, well, that's weird. I've gone the wrong way. That's weird. He pokes Tom Aspinall and then gets rewarded with an interim title shot. Well, first of all, accidents do happen. It wasn't intentional. I'll give Cyril the benefit of the doubt on that. People get poked in the eye all the time. I don't think they're intentional. But regardless, he is fighting for the interim strap against Alex Pereira, which is very impressive because Alex Pereira will be the first person to ever compete for 3 different titles, 3 different weight classes, which is just... it is insane. I mean, the success that this guy's had is phenomenal.
This goes way beyond missing some random fight night. This is the UFC sending a crystal clear message that they're moving ahead with or without their heavyweight champion for the most unprecedented event they've ever put together.
That's John Jones would have just taken down Alex Pereira. Pardon me, it's early. I've only had a few hours sleep. But yeah, Jones would have probably taken down Pereira. Wouldn't have been easy, right? Magomed Ankalaev has tried to do that. Other people have tried to do that. Jan Blachowicz tried to do that. But this is John Jones we're talking about. Look at what he did to Cyril Gane. And remember, in the first round, even Tom Aspinall couldn't take down Cyril Gane. But John could, right? So that's just something to think about. John would have probably taken Pereira down and finished him by a ground and pound, you know, choked him out, whatever, and it could have been a quick performance.
The expectation was through the roof for Jones to headline this historic White House event. Everyone was dreaming about that potential super fight against someone like Alex Pereira that would have absolutely shattered the internet and generated ridiculous pay-per-view numbers. But there's something important being highlighted here about all those question marks that follow Jones around everywhere he goes.
Either man is going to shoot a double leg takedown. It's going to be a kickboxing match in 4-ounce gloves. And then when you look at the matchup, on one side you've got Pereira, who's got insane power, who was the middleweight champion, the light heavyweight champion, and now potentially heavyweight champion. Again, legendary stuff. The power will travel. He had knockout power at 185. 205 he will, and at heavyweight he's still going to pack the same amount of punch. Granted, you're fighting bigger people, you're striking bigger people with bigger necks and bigger jaws and just generally heavy, so they'll be able to absorb the blows better, but he's still going to crack a punch, man. Simple as that.
Those lingering doubts and concerns reflect a growing sentiment that's been building in the MMA world for quite a while now. When Dana White and the UFC are putting together a marquee event like this one, with political implications and national spotlight reliability and positive image become absolutely critical, non-negotiable requirements really. Maybe Jones' complicated past with the suspensions and outside issues, or more recently his contract standoffs and the negotiation games he's been playing just represented too much risk for a card designed to showcase strength, stability, and the absolute best face of mixed martial arts to mainstream America.
But he's got the punching power. He's not quite as smooth or quite as slick as Cyril Gane, although I'm not saying he's not slick, I'm not saying he's not smooth, I'm not saying he hasn't got great combinations, because he does. He's a brilliant world-class kickboxer. But on the other side, you've got Cyril Gane, who's very, very light on the feet, very bouncy, very floaty, kind of glides around the octagon, and extremely fast for the heavyweight division. I don't think either guy is going to go for a takedown. If it does go down to the ground, it'll be after one of them gets knocked down. Shut up with the announcements, please. I'm trying to do a YouTube video like an absolute bellend walking through an airport and everyone's looking. It's fully...
Getting excluded from arguably the biggest platform the UFC has ever had, bigger than any traditional pay-per-view, only adds more fuel to the narrative that the UFC isn't waiting around for bones anymore. They've made their strategic choice to keep moving forward whether he's on board or not.
I don't think either guy is going to go for a takedown. If it does go down to the ground, it'll be after one of them gets knocked down. Shut up with the announcements, please. I'm trying to do a YouTube video like an absolute bellend walking through an airport and everyone's looking. It's full of UFC fans because UFC 326 was last night. Anyway, yeah, if it goes to the ground, it's because one of them knocks each other down and then they go to finish it. So this is going to be a fantastic striking affair. In the co-main event at the White House.
The heavyweight division has been complete madness this past year, and this whole situation perfectly captures all the drama and uncertainty that's opened the door for other fighters to grab that spotlight Jones used to own without question.
The script has been flipped completely on its head. Remember, he was the interim champion and couldn't get a shot at the undisputed. Hello, she's looking at me with a smirk. Couldn't get a shot at the undisputed with John Jones because he wasn't playing games. He had a fight booked against Stipe Miocic, but then Jones certainly was playing games. You know, after the Curtis Blades matchup, we didn't know what he was doing. Now we don't know what's happening with Tom, right? I assume their eyes are going to be good to go very, very soon, right? Otherwise, Eddie Hearn isn't going to sign a fighter that can't fight.
Tom Aspinall's injury taking him out of the picture at such a crucial moment created this opening for someone else to step up. But what's really revealing is the choice to book Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight strap specifically on this White House card, instead of waiting around for Jones to get ready, willing, and available.
But this time it'll be for an interim belt versus an undisputed belt, which makes the fight even bigger. As I said on another video the other day, it all depends on these contractual negotiations. Eddie Hearn came out and was kind of shitting on Tom's contract and saying that he doesn't get paid what he should get paid. If Eddie's going to try and change that contract, and you know, that is what a good manager does, to be fair, and you want the best management team on your side. You certainly don't want an amateur. You don't want a chump. You don't want someone that doesn't know what they're doing. But if he tries to push the goalposts far too far, UFC aren't going to agree to that, and there might be some kind of stalling, and we might have Tom.
This move sends absolute shockwaves through the division. It's an unmistakable signal from Dana White and the entire executive team that this show rolls on no matter what. The UFC machine doesn't pause even when the undisputed champion is unavailable, hurt, or apparently unwilling to compete on their timeline and terms.
He knocked out Jean Silva, and what else did he do? Oh, I mean, listen, he's just must-see TV. And then on the other side, Steve Garcia hasn't got the same kind of brand value as Diego Lopez, but holy shit, man, he's on, I think, an 8-fight win streak, and they're all stoppages, most of them in the first round. I think one of them got to the second round, and you gotta love Steve Garcia. He's a nasty, nasty guy. So that'll be the first fight on the card. I didn't see this one coming. Bo Nickel versus Kyle Dorcas. I didn't expect that one. It'll be a good fight. Dorcas, he's on a 2-fight win streak. Bo Nickel, of course, represents.
We're not looking at some simple scheduling mix-up that got fixed with a replacement fight. This is strategic repositioning, a deliberate business move that effectively pushes Jones aside from the biggest event of the year, maybe the biggest in UFC history. They're replacing his star power and legendary status with this fresh, exciting matchup that brings completely different energy and storylines to the heavyweight picture.
Fair play, right? Obviously, there was talk of Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler competing on that card. Dana said, nah, we ain't interested in that anymore. But it turns out it was the Conor McGregor side. Now, Conor came out and he was doing an interview with Chael Sonnen, and he brought up some good points. He said, listen, it's going to be a sellout with my name involved. Regardless, it's going to do blockbuster numbers.
You know, like a double sale thing. That's the White House is going to hit no matter what.
And he's absolutely right. When Conor comes back, it's going to be insane, right? And that's just the facts of the matter. So they don't need to put him on the White House card. And he said, they don't put me on 300. They'll put me on 301 or 200. They'll put me on 201.
The eye poke incident with Cyril Gane in his last fight might look like just bad luck, the kind of unfortunate thing that happens in combat sports and shouldn't define where a fighter goes next. But the reality is, Gane is now getting rewarded with an interim title shot on the White House card, which is absolutely massive for his trajectory.
Do we think John Jones actually is retired? That'll be it. We'll never see him again. If it is, it's kind of an unceremonious way to go out. I remember when I retired, I wasn't happy with the way that it ended because I wanted to retire in the Octagon after a fight, win or lose. I wanted to thank the crowd. That's why I was going to take one more fight. I was actually in negotiations to fight Rashad Evans at the O2 Arena in London because I romanticized this idea of thanking the crowd and all this type of stuff and putting the gloves down and going through that whole thing. And my manager, Audi Atara, was like, Mike, you're romanticizing this in your mind for this big moment, but what you're doing is you're putting your vision.
This decision that had to get multiple approvals but ultimately needed Dana White's stamp of enthusiastic endorsement shows us exactly where the UFC priorities actually sit right now. They've deliberately chosen this compelling narrative featuring Alex Pereira's absolutely historic chase for a 3-division title, something that's never been accomplished at this level. It demonstrates clear willingness to build new stars and create fresh storylines instead of holding on to established champions or waiting indefinitely for Jones to figure out his situation.
Also ashamed that apparently he needs hip surgery. He was talking about, you know, being riddled with arthritis, got caught on camera. Dana mentioned that again at the press conference.
Is it fair to say then John Jones is retired and this is the end of his time?
Yes.
Said he might need a hip replacement. So I hope that all works out for him. And if it is the end of a legendary career, fair play, man. Talk about knocking it out of the park, making an insane amount of money and building a life for yourself, because that's really what you can do. A lot of people talk shit about the UFC and they say me being a company man. Look at me, for crying out loud. One day you could be me, wandering around an airport with a camera in your hand, looking like an absolute dildo.
For Jones, sitting at home watching the heavyweight division evolve without him seeing it create new legends, especially with such high-stakes, record-breaking fights that could shape the division for years, headlining a presidential event with unmatched mainstream exposure, has to feel like a harsh wake-up call that his time at the absolute peak of this sport might be slipping away while the UFC makes calculated decisions that directly impact his championship reign and legacy. This is where the criticism of John Jones, whether intentional or not, really starts gaining momentum in MMA circles. There's this tactical dismissal of how his likely fight style would look against someone like Alex Pereira that's been circulating. The suggestion from many analysts is that Jones would simply take Pereira down right away, neutralize his striking completely, and finish him via ground and pound in a pretty straightforward performance. This implies it would be less exciting, less dramatic than the striking battle we'll get from the Gane-Pereira matchup. This subtle but incredibly damaging critique from people who really understand the sport is a serious blow to Jones' marketability, especially when the UFC needs to put on this show-stopping event that grabs mainstream attention. Dana White and the executive team absolutely need fireworks for the White House card. They need moments that sports networks will replay for weeks, and this analysis suggests Jones wouldn't provide that level of excitement. This justifies his exclusion without directly attacking his character or diminishing what he's accomplished by framing it as purely a business decision to ensure maximum entertainment for the largest possible audience. Compare that potentially boring outcome with Jones to the absolute war we're actually getting on this card instead. This paints such a vivid picture of what Cyril Gane versus Alex Pereira is going to deliver, and it's basically a guaranteed elite level kickboxing match in 4-ounce UFC gloves, which changes absolutely everything. The focus on Pereira's insane knockout power that can end fights with one shot from anywhere, plus his historic pursuit of that third divisional title that would cement him as an all-time great regardless of what happens after highlights. The pure excitement and dramatic potential the UFC is bringing to the White House. This isn't just another fight on another card. This is a spectacle, a must-see moment perfectly designed for high-profile mainstream audiences who might not even be hardcore MMA fans. For Dana White, choosing this clash, this specific stylistic matchup over a potentially dominant but way less thrilling Jones performance where he just wrestles someone for 15 or 25 minutes is a clear defensible strategic move that makes perfect business sense. It further explains exactly why Jones wasn't considered the right fit for such a critical event with so much riding on it. The detailed breakdown of Cyril Gane's slick, bouncy, incredibly fast kickboxing style contrasted perfectly with Alex Pereira's raw, devastating knockout power that he's shown repeatedly explains exactly why this interim heavyweight bout is positioned as the main attraction everyone will be discussing at the White House. The animated, excited description, even with all the chaos of airport announcements and travel disruptions in the background, really shows the genuine anticipation building for what should be an absolute stand-up war between two elite strikers. For Dana White, securing a fight like this, a guaranteed striker versus striker clash at the highest level, with both men having every reason to keep it standing and trade shots, is a masterstroke for an event that desperately needs broad mainstream appeal beyond just the hardcore fan base. It's an indirect criticism of Jon Jones, whether intended or not, by showcasing a superior, more universally exciting alternative for the main stage. This clearly suggests the UFC prioritized entertainment value and a compelling narrative that casual fans can immediately understand over the reigning champion's presence and legacy. The genuine excitement you can hear even through all the airport chaos and background noise that would normally be distracting speaks volumes about the quality and anticipated excitement of the Gane versus Pereira fight chosen for the White House event. The emphatic statement with complete confidence that it will be a fantastic striking affair, an absolute guaranteed crowd pleaser for Freedom 250 that will have everyone on their feet, shows this isn't just another fight booked to fill a card slot. This is a strategic decision by Dana White and the entire matchmaking team to create a stylistic clash designed from the ground up for maximum entertainment value and mainstream appeal to people who might be watching UFC for the first time. By explicitly positioning this fight as the premier, striking affair, the marquee matchup for such a monumental card with unprecedented attention, it subtly but effectively reinforces the earlier criticism of Jon Jones' potentially dominant but significantly less action-packed style if he fought Pereira. This reaffirms and validates the UFC choice to move forward with a completely different vision for their flagship event. This is where the whole Dana White criticism of Jon Jones' narrative gets its strongest evidence. The explicit statement without any sugarcoating that Jon Jones was playing games after his Curtis Blades matchup, dragging out negotiations and during the Miocic booking discussions, directly links Jones' actions and decisions and negotiating tactics to the crazy situation we're witnessing now with the completely flipped script in the heavyweight division. Dana White has publicly expressed frustration with Jones' contract negotiations and his fight frequency or complete lack of it in the past during press conferences and interviews. This assessment aligns perfectly with the UFC decision to effectively sideline Jones from a historic event he should have been headlining. By highlighting Jones' perceived stalling, his unwillingness to commit, the UFC provides ready-made justification for his absence from the White House card. They're subtly but effectively presenting it as direct consequence of his own choices and negotiating strategy rather than some arbitrary snub or personal vendetta. The discussion around Tom Aspinall's contract negotiations with the UFC and potential for his team to push things too far and stall out discussions offers another fascinating layer to the Jon Jones saga, even if indirectly through a parallel situation. While Aspinall's circumstances are obviously unique with different stakes, the underlying tension between fighter and promotion over contracts, money, and timing runs through the entire sport. If Eddie Hearn, Aspinall's manager, pushes the goalpost too far and demands too much, the UFC won't just agree to whatever terms get put in front of them. This leads to fighters getting sidelined regardless of their talent level. This perfectly mirrors the criticisms levied against Jon Jones regarding his own protracted negotiations that seem to stretch on forever. Dana White's history shows very clear, consistent stance over the years that if you're not willing to fight on reasonable terms, the UFC will absolutely move on without you. This business reality, this hardball approach serves as crucial backdrop explaining exactly why Jones, despite his incredible legacy and status as one of the greatest ever, wasn't considered irreplaceable for the White House card if his contractual terms and demands weren't aligning with what the promotion was willing to offer. Beyond the interim heavyweight title fight getting most of the attention, there are other incredibly exciting matchups stacked on Freedom 250 White House card. Fights like Steve Garcia versus Diego Lopez and Pantoja versus Kyle Daukaus that are going to be absolute barn burners. These aren't just filler fights thrown on prelims to pad out the card. They're high-energy fan-favorite bouts featuring rising stars hungry to make their mark and proven finishers with highlight reel knockouts. Including these compelling contests at multiple card levels demonstrates the UFC incredibly deep roster and their ability to build a stacked must-watch event from top to bottom without needing Jon Jones anywhere near it. For Dana White, this impressive array of talent serves as powerful message to everyone watching that the UFC machine is thriving healthier than ever. They're showcasing must-see TV and future legends who will carry the sport forward, even when the former long-reigning champion who dominated for years isn't on the bill. It's strategic positioning that completely dilutes any perceived snub of Jones by simply offering an abundance of other compelling reasons to watch, making his absence feel way less significant. The explanation for Conor McGregor's absence from the White House card is particularly revealing and applies directly to the Jon Jones situation when you really think about it. McGregor's star power is so absolutely immense, so far beyond normal fighter popularity, that he doesn't need a marquee event like Freedom 250 to sell out arenas or break pay-per-view records. He's a draw by himself, a once-in-a-generation superstar able to headline his own events and generate massive numbers regardless of opponent or circumstances. While Jones doesn't command quite the same raw pay-per-view numbers as peak McGregor, this underlying principle suggests something important. If Jones was truly ready, healthy, and making specific demands the UFC found unreasonable, the promotion might have opted to save him for a standalone event rather than the White House card. Or looking at it from another angle, if Jones wasn't a sure thing, if there was any doubt about his commitment or health, why would the UFC risk the optics on such a high-profile, politically sensitive card where everything needs to go perfectly? Dana White can choose to elevate new stars on the biggest possible stage while letting massive draws or those perceived as less reliable at this moment headline other events elsewhere. The thought of Jon Jones potentially retiring and the personal reflection about watching careers end unceremoniously adds empathy and sadness to this discussion, but also some criticism about how this is all unfolding. The idea of Jones going out like this without a grand farewell in the Octagon, without the send-off that a legend of his caliber would normally receive, stands in stark contrast to what many legendary fighters desire and what the sport usually provides. For Dana White, while he might genuinely respect Jones' incredible legacy and everything he's accomplished over his career, the operational reality is that the UFC cannot afford to romanticize a fighter's exit if it conflicts with their immediate business objectives, event planning, or promotional strategy. Jones' absence from the White House card, if it indeed marks his quiet, understated end rather than a triumphant final chapter, is a decision the UFC seems to have made peace with, even even if it's acknowledged as somewhat disappointing for fans who wanted closure, and perhaps for Jones himself, who might have envisioned a different ending. But here's the most direct connection to the Dana White criticism of Jon Jones' narrative we can find: the explicit mention of Dana White publicly discussing Jon Jones' hip surgery and the fact that he's reportedly dealing with serious arthritis and physical issues. While this might be framed as concern as a promoter caring about his fighter's health, Dana's very public disclosure of Jones' health problems, especially in context of his notable absence from a major event like the White House card, can absolutely be seen as strategic positioning with multiple purposes. It paints a picture of a champion whose physical condition makes him an unreliable asset going forward, thereby legitimizing his exclusion from the White House card and potentially any future major UFC plans. It's not a direct attack on his character, legacy, or accomplishments in the Octagon, but it's very public undermining of his immediate future as an active fighter. This subtly but effectively suggests his career is naturally winding down due to health issues beyond anyone's control, rather than the UFC making a business decision to snub a healthy, willing champion who could still compete at the highest level.